Hey everyone, Pastor Dave. Here I want to talk about abortion, pro-life, or pro-life versus anti-abortion. There is a difference. I heard an argument, if you will, in favor of abortion, and I was unimpressed. The basic assumption is that the baby, because it's not born, is really nothing more than just some kind of tissue, a little biological excess, almost kind of like maybe, I don't know, a wart or something. Nothing of any significance. So the idea is that a woman has the right to get rid of this excess tissue if she wants. It's her body, that tissue that's growing in her womb and living off her like some parasite is really not something that should have its own rights or values. With that in mind, I'm definitely not that kind of a pro-life or pro-abortion advocate. Because it just strikes me that if a woman just abdicates any kind of responsibility of anything growing inside her, even if she consents to sex and in fact consents to unprotected sex, and she's the one that's completely responsible for, well, not completely, obviously, primarily responsible for what's growing within her uterus, it seems very callous for a woman to just dismiss what's growing inside her as nothing more than just kind of an abscess or something that's growing inside her that's not, almost like a cancer or tumor or something. So that's not a very compelling argument. But if a woman is raped or somehow forced to have a child, then I would be in favor of the abortion, if that's what she chose. I myself consider myself pro-life. However, I'm a strong advocate of pro-choice. And I know that may sound like a contradiction, but I think the only way to be really pro-life, in favor of life, is to have a pro-choice environment where people can actually choose to continue the life of the baby or get rid of the baby or get rid of the tumor or whatever they consider it. Because then you can drive or come up with more compelling reasons why a mother should try to keep the baby. But if you're an anti-abortionist and you don't care about the mother and you're only trying to get to the baby to the point where abortion then becomes illegal, whatever it is, 20 weeks or 24 weeks, and that's all you care about, then you're even worse than people who are in favor of abortion. Because now you're deliberately compelling a woman, somehow you manage to convince them to keep the baby, but you don't have any interest in the life of the baby once it's born. You're not interested in helping the mother and perhaps the father to become good parents. You're not interested in supporting them, making sure they find work or they have the education to improve their standard of living so that they can actually care for the child. But if you're an anti-abortionist, you're only trying to get to the point where abortion becomes illegal. And then the mother or the doctor or somebody will then be faced with criminal charges for doing something against the law, because you're all about law and order. But you're not a Christian in the sense that you have compassion for the mother and the baby that's growing inside her, especially once that baby is born. You don't want her to have health care. You don't want mom to have as good a job as any. You don't want to try to help the mother care for her baby. I mean, let's face it, if there's a 13-year-old who was raped by an uncle or something and she's now carrying a child and she has no means of support at all, she can't even take care of herself, and you reach out to this young woman and, give the impression that you care and you make your ultrasound and you do all these kind of things to convince her that maybe she should try to keep the baby. I don't know if you offer any real help after the baby's born. I suspect you don't. But you do try to compel them with some kind of imagery using ultrasound that they really see the baby growing inside you really is a life. And you really should respect that. And that sounds good, except when you take away any kind of real opportunity for this mother to be able to take care of her child once the baby's born. And that, to me, is the criminal part, where you're only interested in convincing this 13-year-old girl that she should keep her baby because otherwise she'll be damned by God and go into the eternal pit fires of hell, or whatever compelling argument you give her so that she delays the choice of getting an abortion until after the 20-week period where she can no longer do it legally. And then she puts herself at risk if she attempts to do it through some kind of back channel or whatever. She ends up having the baby and she can't really take care of the child. And to me, those that think that this is God's will, that this is what God has intended for you, that you essentially trick this 13-year-old into keeping her baby for 2, 3, 4 more months until it now becomes illegal for her to get an abortion, and then you have no intention of providing any kind of education or case management support or any means for her to get a job and be able to take care of the child. That is not a Christian way of trying to save an unborn child. That's absolutely horrible, and shame on you for even thinking that this is remotely a Christian concept. Believe me, I appreciate that you want to believe that the life growing inside a mother is really a baby, and I agree with you. That's how I see it. And I definitely don't like pro-choice, pro-abortion advocates who think that that what's growing inside the mother is nothing more than this some kind of excess tissue that needs to be discarded. I mean, that to me is completely callous and completely devoid of any kind of appreciation for the process of birth, the creation of life. I mean, that's sad. But as a Christian, you got to do better than that. If you can compel a woman to really appreciate that what's growing inside her is a beautiful baby, that's fine. But you got to step it up. You got to also provide the help that the young mother needs. Promise and follow through with your promise that you'll make sure she's going to be able to raise this child herself. Be convincing. Make sure she has the proper health care. Make sure the baby has the proper health care. You should put your money where your mouth is. If you really care about the baby growing inside the mother, then you need to really care about both the mother and the baby growing inside the mother. And you have to care for the mother and the child and make sure they can stay on their feet and that the mother can really care for her child and hope somehow include the father in the process as well, which would be a beautiful thing. So the idea that you're just going to trick people into holding on to the baby just long enough until it goes beyond the rule or the period where abortions are legal, then that's heinous. That's even worse than thinking that the baby is nothing more than just a collection of tissue. Because you're really being deceptive. You're really pretending you care when in fact you really don't. You just want the baby to survive to the point where abortion becomes illegal, and then you want law and order to take over, and you hope that the mother goes to jail, or the fear of it compels her to do something. And that's just a completely unchristian approach to a pro-life stance. So don't be an anti-abortionist, where you're only interested in trying to keep the baby alive inside the mother to the point where after that point it becomes illegal for the mother to get an abortion. That's cruel. That is evil. That is absolutely as heinous a thing as I've ever heard. You should step up, be a better Christian, be completely understanding, non-judgmental. Be forgiving and loving and show the compassion that the mother needs to, yes, appreciate that what's growing inside her is a real life, and that you're going to be there and make sure she can raise her child and be happy that she can raise her child. If she's on her own, if you leave her on her own and she has the baby, and who knows what will happen. You're just not showing the love of Christ when you trick people into just keeping their baby long enough until it becomes illegal to abort. You can't really call yourself a Christian if that's your strategy, if that's how you're doing God's work. Absolutely shameful, absolutely disgusting. I'm sure there are lots of good organizations that really understand what I'm talking about, that they actually do have compassion for the mother, and they want the mother to really have compassion for the child and to alleviate all of her fears about trying to bring this child into the world, because the world is a cruel place. But if you're a good Christian and you do show compassion, you may give her reason to believe that maybe the world isn't so bad after all, that maybe I really can do this. With the help of these wonderful people, I might be able to raise my baby, and I might even be able to get the father of the baby to be a part of the baby's life. That is the right approach. And that's the only approach that should matter to someone who claims they are pro-life. Because if you're doing the whole deceptive trick the mother until the baby becomes too old or passes that legal point of an abortion, then you're not a Christian at all. That's as evil a concept as I can imagine. Oh my God. So then you're just an anti-abortionist. So you want to just trick people into keeping their baby long enough so that if they do break the law, they will be punished. And that punishment, or the fear of the punishment, is the only thing that supposedly you think will keep this mother from harming her baby and ensure that the baby goes on and has this wonderful life. That's devoid of reality and completely heinous. It's just outrageous. Then be a Christian. Be a part of organizations that actually do care about mother and child. That's what you should do. And if you really can't understand the idea of having compassion to a mother and to the baby after the baby's born, then you're not pro-life. You're not pro-life because once the baby's born, hey, Mom, you're on your own. We did our part. Hey, the baby's still alive. But you're not going to be there for them. Outrageous. You're anti-Medicare for all because you don't want to be part of a system that actually makes sure all Americans are caring for each other. That's incredibly un-Christian. That's not the Christian value of compassion for everyone. You really should have compassion. And it should really be demonstrated in the way you think about life. Be pro-life. Be pro-life at every stage of life, not just the 20 weeks of gestation inside the mother's womb. That's where the miracle happens? Well, no, that's really not where the miracle happens. The miracle is to be able to give birth to the baby and have the baby live a good life, a healthy life, a productive life, a satisfying life. Whatever it is, you should be pro-life at every stage. You should be against the death penalty because you're pro-life. You should be against abortion, sure, because you're pro-life, but you should be for health care for all because you're pro-life. And at every stage of life, you should encourage life and protect life. And not just trick people into just having a baby they can't really take care of. That's just cruel. So really look inside yourself and ask yourself the question, am I truly pro-life? Am I pro-life to the baby, to the newborn baby, to the young child, to the teenager, to the adult, to the mature adult, to the elder? Do you actually favor life all the way through all cycles of life? Or you're just going to stand in your own sense of self-satisfaction that, wow, you did your part. You saved another child and made sure mother didn't abort the baby and tricked her into keeping her baby until after the law of abortion becomes illegal. Horrible. I can't say that enough. So I need Christians, social conservative Christians who call themselves anti-abortionists should change their tune. They should be pro-life, and they should be pro-life at every stage of life. All right, I've said my piece. Thank you very much. I'll talk at you again. Thanks.